This project was funded by the Jesuit Refugee Service with support from the SICAP programme. The Social Inclusion and Community Activation programme is co-funded by the Irish Government through the Department of Rural and Community Development and the European Social Fund Plus under the Employment, Inclusion, Skills and Training Programme 2021 to 2027.
My name is Niamh MacNamara. I am from Limerick City and I was the General Manager of Cahermoyle House.
How long were you in this role?
I've been here in Cahermoyle since 2020. So initially myself and my brother came in as project managers, property managers here with a view to kind of turning it into an event space and a, farm to fork kind of restaurant, community hub type of place. And we were working on it on and off for a couple of years, and then the Ukrainian emergency happened. So that was in 2022. And since then I've been the manager of the place as an emergency accommodation shelter.
How did the centre become established as an accommodation centre?
Well, really it was the owner of the property. I don't know the nuts and bolts of how he went about doing it or why he made the choice. But it was very fast from where I was sitting at the time. I just remember we got a phone call. There was a guy here working, kind of a temporary staff member here working from South Africa. He was an operations manager who'd come to help us turn the place into a hotel, basically. And we had architects in and we had the books gone from the library and all the furniture out. So we were kind of really on that road. And then boom, just one day we got a phone call from the owner to say another property of his, not so far from here, but an hour from here, had Ukrainian people arriving that evening. So I went over to help get the place ready, and there was a big scramble to get everything done, and left at around 12 or 1 that morning, and the people arrived at about 3 that morning to the other property, and I thought, grand, I'll go back to my job now, get on with it, and then the next morning, 9 o'clock, got the phone call, they're coming to Cahermoyle tonight. So it was mental. Cahermoyle had been empty for so long really and unused. There was still areas of the house that had nursing home beds in there and, stuff that things that had never been used. The gas boilers hadn't been used in ages and the kitchen needed to be cleaned. So it was just all hands on deck then that day to get the place ready and get people in and get the services working. And then that evening around, I think about 12 o'clock, the first people arrived, and that was the start of it then.
And how many people arrived on that day?
That night, around, I think it was somewhere between 12 and 1, around, I think 33. It was a big 33-seater bus that arrived. And then the next day, more people arrived. And for the first few months, it was constant streams of people coming. And then some people would go back to Dublin, or they would say, no, I want to go back to Ukraine, because it was quite traumatic, as you can imagine, for a lot of people. But we had some really big groups arriving in the first couple of months. So it was quite hectic. The numbers were quite high for a while of people who were staying here. They would kind of ebb and flow, but in the first few weeks, I'd say maybe 90 to 100 people arrived, I'd say.
And then in terms of the actual size of Cahermoyle House, how many rooms were there to facilitate these arrivals?
Well, Cahermoyle actually, the history of Cahermoyle is quite fascinating, but the most previous or the most modern history, I suppose, or the most recent owners, should I say, before the current owner, were nursing home. It was a private nursing home. So there are about 39 to 40 bedrooms that were nursing home rooms. And then the main part of the house, which is the older part, I suppose, I don't know how you really describe it, we just call it the main part. There's about another maybe 9 or 10 rooms in there. And then we had a couple of big dorm style rooms. So the chapel was used as a dorm as well. We didn't have to use the chapel in the early days, but it was ready for use in the very, very beginning. And then as more and more people started to come, then we used it as an emergency accommodation. So we quite a bit of space, good bit of space.
And in terms then of the arrivals, is there a place for them to cook here, or what way does it work in terms of food?
In terms of food, so this is what's called fully serviced accommodation. So we have a fully commercial kitchen out there. We serve breakfast, lunch and dinner at set times. And also there's a small staff kitchen, which used to be my kitchen before the lads arrived, but I gave it back basically to the mothers in the house so they can kind of book it and use it if they want to cook for their kids. And also over time, people started to want to cook their own food, so they buy little pieces of equipment like hobs, and we bought a small kind of standalone oven type of thing for them, so that if they do want to cook throughout the day or they don't want to eat what we're serving, they can still do that for themselves. So it's a little bit of both, but technically it's fully serviced.
What was the initial feeling, I suppose, when they landed here in Cahermoyle? from the Ukrainian community?
I think it was different for everybody really who arrived, because some people came and they were quite happy to be here and, looking forward to figuring out where they were and getting settled in. But other people came and they just were in their shells and they just really didn't want to come out of them for a very long time. Or like the very first people who arrived were Anna Martinenko and her sister Marina Timashina, and her mom and dad Alla and Valentine, and they were the first people to walk in the door. And mom and dad were really old, still are actually, because they're living in Abbeyfield now. But and their dad was quite feeble, I suppose, for want of a better word. And just when they arrived, they were just shook. They had travelled across Europe. I think they got the boat over here. And with their elderly parents, the sisters had to take care of them. So when they arrived here and they got to the door and they came in and the fire was lighting, and there was lots of the local community had come to help on that day as well. So we kind of really just welcomed them in and got their dad into bed and got them resting. And they were just so happy to be somewhere safe, and you could really feel it from them. They were just really happy that their parents were safe and that they were safe and they had a bed to lie down in. And then there were other people that were coming and saying, what the hell am I doing out here in the middle of nowhere? And quite often the buses would arrive very late at night. And it was just, I think, even up in Dublin with the crowd that were sending them down, they were just swamped by people coming in. So you mightn't even get the notice that people were coming until maybe an hour before they arrived, and then you didn't get the full information about who was coming. So you'd have to figure out what bedrooms they were going into, where you're going to put people, and then some people weren't happy with what they were getting, so they were like, no, I'm going back to Dublin, I want something else. But I'd say it was kind of maybe 70-30. Most people were really, really happy to be someplace safe. And then I suppose the next morning, then when the light comes up and you get to see where you are, and it's not just a big spooky house in the middle of nowhere, then people start to settle in a bit more and start, making the place comfortable for themselves and finding a way to make it home, really.
And talk to me about your role then. It's not a typical 9-to-5 job, is it?
No, definitely not. No. I suppose as time has gone on, we've tried to structure it a bit more so that staff do have, set times, and there's a bit more of a work-life balance. But it's, you're kind of all in, and especially for the first year or so, it was 24/7. Still 24/7 for anybody who works here, really, because you're working with people, so if they need you at a certain time, you're not going to tell them to go away. But no, you could be working any hours. It's 24 hours. You have to have people here 24 hours. So.
And how would you describe a typical day?
A typical day? It depends. Some days can be really quiet now that people have settled in, but a typical day is usually trying to find a balance between taking care of the people that are living here and taking care of the property. So obviously there's a lot of different people with a lot of different needs. You could be dealing with requests just maybe to help with paperwork for social welfare or medical cards or temporary protection or any amount of paperwork that people need assistance with, or dealing with on the spot medical incidents or arguments between people, because that's quite natural as well with people living in close quarters for this long time, or dealing with the staff. I mean, there's 18 staff here on site now at the moment, or dealing with, like I said, the property and any one of the 1,000 things that happen in a property of this size at any given day. So it's big, it can be very busy, can be very hectic and very full on, but it's fun as well.
And the makeup then of the Ukrainian community here, is there a mix of male and female?
It is, well, it's a mix of male and female. It always has been, but it has changed definitely over the last maybe 6 to 12 months. That you're seeing kind of younger men coming in for whatever their personal reasons are. But initially we had mostly women and children here. We had up to, I think, over 50 children here at one stage who were all going to school in the surrounding areas. And a lot of single moms whose partners were still in Ukraine or they were in the war, or lots of different stories. But it has changed somewhat over time for sure.
Talk to me then about their adaptation into the community.
Well, the community here have been unbelievable. St. Kieran's would be the local community group and the local GA group, I suppose, as well. But the community of Arda and all the surrounding villages, when they heard that the Ukrainian people were arriving, they just descended upon Cahermoyle. That day that we found out that they were coming, there was people here I had never met before, and they just came and they just fell in. Straight away they were moving beds. They were saying, okay, well, we need to have a room. Like, they were thinking of things that we weren't thinking of. It was panic stations. But like, you know, I remember one of the neighbours saying, you know, we need to have a room ready with a cot in case a baby comes. And they just did it. You know, they got a cot from someplace out there, brought it in, got all the baby blankets, and they just got donations. The donations were just coming in like waves of donations. There were so many that we actually had to move them out of the house and down to the community centre. And the girls in the community centre actually took that on and brought people down here from Carmoyle down to the community centre to get them what they needed. There were invitations to go and join the local sports teams, all the schools. We got in touch with the schools quite early, and it was a vice versa thing. There was local development groups, West Limerick Resources. They reached out to us. They were an immense help in, you know, kind of pointing out which services we needed to contact and stuff like that. So really, I couldn't speak highly enough of the local community around here. It was amazing to see how they reacted to it. And
what is the day-to-day life for somebody living here?
Day-to-day life can be actually quite busy. Most people who can work, we say if they have the English or if the opportunity is there, they do work. So there's a lot of buses that leave here. We have, I think, we could have 6 buses leaving in the morning between school buses and buses for people to go to town. So there's English lessons. A lot of the guys will do kind of maybe safe pass courses, stuff like that to get them set up for work. Maybe they just go in and knock around town and do a few bits and pieces. But people are busy and the kids all study. And when they're finished studying in school in Ireland, they'll often come home and do their Ukrainian homework then online as well. So everybody's busy, really.
And yourself, have you picked up any Ukrainian in your time here?
A few words, yeah. I can say, no, you can't, or yes, you can, or come back tomorrow.
The key phrases.
Yeah, key phrases. Where's your mother? Yeah.
When you look out the windows here and it's just so open and it seems so vast, there must have been a peace and almost a feeling of safety for a lot of the people here.
I like to think so. Yeah, I believe that's the case for sure. I think maybe for some of the younger people, it can feel a bit isolating. And remembering as well that a lot of people come from cities in Ukraine, which are huge. Like they're not like cities in Ireland, they're epic. Even the towns over there are closer to what we have as cities. But definitely there's a peace here. There's the freedom to walk around the grounds, and there's a quietness here that I think helps people when they first arrive, for sure, yeah.
And the grounds then, is there places within the grounds, you know, that people can grow their own gardens, or, you know, that they can find a bit of respite?
Yeah, definitely there are, yeah. Not everybody is into that, but people who are, yeah, we have some nice garden space for people to use. And Anna, the girl that I mentioned earlier, she took on what was a medicinal herb garden that I'd set up a couple of years ago, and she just took that on and she just used it for her the entire time that she was here for her own, I suppose, therapy. And she made some beautiful herbal teas and soaps and stuff from the herbs that she started to grow down there. And some other people got involved with the vegetable garden that we were doing, but it's epic. It's quite big, so it kind of fell off the radar there last year, but hoping that this year people will take it on for themselves again when the sun starts shining again and get out. But yeah, for sure, people who are interested in the outdoors are always out there. Like.
And, you know, in your role, it must be, you know, it's quite a large operation here. I'd imagine it's quite hectic.
It's hectic, yeah. It can be very hectic. Like sometimes like that, you like at the moment you can hear it's really quiet here. You wouldn't think at all that there's 100 people living here, but it can be very hectic. You can have people standing outside the office at 8 o'clock in the morning waiting for you for any given reason. You can also be hearing some very personal stories from people, you know, and I suppose you just have to kind of be ready to handle that. It can be quite stressful, and I suppose then trying to balance that with the practical demands of trying to keep the house in order and keeping everything running so that people can actually live here. Trying to find that balance can be a bit difficult, but all the people who live here and all the Ukrainian people who live here are great. Like, they're fantastic people. They're really nice, and they're always there to help staff if we need, and they're always there for a chat if you want. And I would definitely count a lot of them friends. So I think when you get to that stage with people, it becomes less of a chore to actually deal with them and listen to them and, you know, work with them on a daily basis.
And since the doors opened here, do you have any idea how many people have come through those doors?
I don't. I keep meaning to make that up, actually, but I'd say it's well over 400 people anyway. But actually, I don't know. I could be pulling that number out of my armpit, really. But quite a few. Yeah, quite a few have gone back to Ukraine, found houses in the community, moved to different areas of Ireland. And for the first maybe year and a half, those numbers then were just immediately replenished because people were coming or they wanted to move down here or whatever, whatever would happen. But now that's completely slowed down. So the way it looks to me now, the people who are here are the people who are going to be here for as long as it continues, unless there's another change in the near future, which I don't see happening.
How are they kept safe here?
Physically safe, do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, we've fobs on all the doors. We're quite secure here. Like, we don't allow people to bring guests into the house, only into certain areas, into communal areas. And guests aren't permitted to walk down around bedrooms and stuff for obvious privacy reasons. We ask that all residents, if they buy a car, they give us their reg number so we know who's on the property at all times. We've evening staff, night staff, office staff, full CCTV. So all the normal trappings of a building this size we have. And I suppose we do encourage residents to take ownership over the safety of the property as well. And if they see somebody strange walking around, immediately go to management or ask that person, can I help you? What are you doing here? And allow the management then to go and deal with that. But we'd be quite aware of that for sure. And it is a secure place for people, 100%.
Is there any support services here for the people living here?
In the property?
In the property.
In the property, not so much, but we deal a lot with third-party groups. So, we have a lot of support from TUSLA, Limerick Sports Partnership. So, the HSE, TUSLA, Limerick Sports Partnership, the Department of Social Protection have been very helpful to us. LCETB for English lessons, things like that. There's a HSE inclusion team based in Limerick City who provide unbelievable services for basically all of the Midwest region for Ukrainian people. So there was psychological care there available. There's a whole range of services for people to access for sure. They're not based within the house, but we help people to reach out for them if they need them.
And I'd imagine all these services help address the mental health of the people living here.
It's always there, yeah. There's always that offering there. There's some free counselling services. My Mind are doing free counselling for Ukrainians. There's another one called Call Tanya, I think. And, if there's any specific, direct and obvious need, then obviously I would step in and, try and directly link somebody with services should they need them. But definitely there's a difference between Irish people and Ukrainian people in that Ukrainian people don't necessarily see the need for psychological care. It's I don't know if it's a cultural thing or it's just not there yet. Maybe it's a bit like Ireland 20 years ago. It's I don't want to talk to anybody, it's my problem, I'll deal with it. It definitely does exist within the Ukrainian community that I'm strong enough to do this by myself, I don't need any outside help. So I don't often see people speaking to psychologists, and that kind of thing, but it's there if they want to.
In your time here then, what are the biggest challenges you faced?
The biggest challenges? That's a big question. I don't know. Can you be more specific?
So even maybe the centre itself, what kind of challenges have the centre faced?
The centre itself, I suppose, just has all the normal challenges of being a very old building in the middle of rural Ireland. So, if the water goes, the water could go all around Newcastle West, but we just happen to have 120, 150 people living here. So that's always a challenge, and it does happen a couple of times a year everywhere in Ireland, as you probably know. Those types of things can be quite challenging. It can be quite challenging, like I said, I suppose, hearing people's personal stories and also seeing that it can be, even though we have a really large property here, understanding that it can still be very claustrophobic for people. And, when people go into their rooms here, that one bedroom is their whole home now, that is a challenge, knowing that is what's happening under this roof. That is a bit of a challenge. I suppose, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of challenges, really. I don't know how to kind of pinpoint one.
And speaking of the community then, can somebody in the community volunteer?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, of course. Yeah. To do what? I don't know, really. There's not, in the beginning there were a lot of volunteers. We were organising a lot of workshops up here and yoga classes and dance workshops and things for the kids outside. And, there was a local woman, Deirdre, she's fantastic as well. She's bringing people down to play rounders and this and that. But, people will engage as they want to. If they don't want to engage, then we kind of realised we had to pull back a bit because we were almost pushing too many things on people and they weren't that engaging like we were talking about earlier. So we kind of realised we had to pull back, and then if people want to do something, they'll come to us, or we'll put something on, or like the West Limerick Resources, we'll put on a workshop now inside in Newcastle, and if people want to go, they'll go, rather than bringing it all out here and kind of pushing it on people in their own homes. And I think that a lot of that had to do with just wanting to kind of relax, you know, and not have to get up on a Saturday morning and do a Zumba workshop if I don't want to in my house, you know, like just leave me alone for a while. But yeah, people definitely do volunteer. Yeah.
And I suppose that's a challenge in itself, you know, trying to make this a home for the people living here.
Yeah, definitely. It is, because a lot of the spaces are communal spaces, so it can be difficult for someone to find a private place for yourself to just sit down. Like before we come into this room, there was a guy there in the computer, like he has to go elsewhere now. But yeah, it can be difficult. Yeah, and I think a lot of it is allowing the people who are living in the house to feedback on what the rules of the house are, and, you know, have a safe place to go, and that if they have a problem or something, they can go into the office and talk to a member of staff, and that member of staff will be non-judgmental. And I mean, sometimes you have to get involved in people's arguments, you have to try and mediate and stuff. But given the fact that it has to be a home, like we do have house rules, and 90% of our house rules are based around respect for other people and respect for the fact that other people need to live here too. It's not just you. So like the rules that people have asked us to implement, they're all just like really about fairness and about giving space to people to be able to just have their own routine, I suppose, you know, like be able to do your washing and be able to cook in peace and be able to store your food in the fridge without somebody stealing it or whatever, like stuff like this. But it can be a big challenge, yeah. And I think the people who live here are rising to that challenge. I mean, it's incredibly difficult for them, like, to live on top of each other, but they do it. Yeah.
Have you learned any of the Ukrainian culture or traditions or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. Like, yeah. We've done a couple of things here with people. Like last October we did there's a October 14th, there's a traditional day of the soldier, I think it's called. So we did a thing here where a local historian came up and spoke a little bit about the history of Arda and Cahermoyle. And one of the guys who was living here at the time, Vitaly Logvinenko, he did a talk about Ukrainian history and the similarities, I suppose, between Irish and Ukrainian history. And the ladies wore traditional dress, and some of them made these beautiful headdresses. And you know, they were very, very keen to share their culture, like specifically at that time as well, because it was a traditional day. But also they made beautiful cakes, and they were talking about the food that they eat. And even like all the girls in the kitchen here are Ukrainian, so they make Ukrainian borscht every day. And sometimes all the women in the house get together and they make vareniki dumplings. Sometimes for special occasions, sometimes just because they want to. And then things like, there was a day last year, I can't remember what it's called, but they have a day where kids or young couples hold hands and they jump over an open fire, and if they're still holding hands at the end of jumping over the fire, they're going to be together forever, and if they don't, then they're going to break up. So I was like, lads, you're not doing jumping over an open fire here, like that's not happening. But they did it anyway. So when I was watching, it was cool. Like, it was really lovely tradition. Like, and they've lovely folklore. They've beautiful traditional clothes where all the embroidery means different things, or maybe it means that it comes from a different region. So yeah, for sure, they're bringing a lot of culture with them, and that's, I suppose, why they're here, is to try and preserve their culture and not have it taken over by the invading power. Like, so definitely they're eager to share it.
And have you noticed any kind of similarities with the Ukrainian and the Irish culture in your time?
I wouldn't say similarities, no. I mean, they're definitely a traditional people. A lot of them are, you know, connected with the land and come from farms, and like they're very down to earth people, for sure. I wouldn't say we're the same. I wouldn't say we're too different either, though. They're a very family-orientated society. I would definitely say that. They're connected to the old stories. They're connected with, like, the reason why they're fighting this war. And I suppose, like, we don't know, but this war is going on a long time, like 2014. And before that, you know, they've been going through this for many, many years. And, you know, they had a Holocaust over there as well a long time ago. So, like, you know, we do share quite a bit of that history, I think. But yeah, there are similarities.
And the centre then, is there any kind of future plans for the centre or anything down the pipeline?
I don't know. It depends on how the next couple of years go, I believe. But you'd have to ask the owner about that. The idea was to have festivals here and have, you know, really cool event and have gigs and stuff. So maybe that will happen. Maybe it will turn into a full-time a permanent commune for Ukrainian people. I don't know, anything could happen really. Carmoyle is wild. So, I don't know, watch this space, I would say.
Obviously, then you spoke about, buses coming down, you get maybe an hour's notice. How do you work with the government on policy and things like that?
On policy, well, so IPAS are the organisation who house people in temporary protection and international protection, and they have very clear antisocial behaviour policy or refusal of accommodation policies and things like that. So, we work off those. Like, we have our own house rules here, which we create, and anything that will say if somebody breaks those rules, there's systems in place on how you deal with the person. So yeah, there are clear policies in line with that, and there's incidents teams and different people that you can speak to if you need them.
From working so long with the Ukrainian community, is there anything you think we could be doing better in terms of policy, or we could help them a little bit better as a country?
I think we're doing a lot for Ukrainian people. I really do. I think maybe we could be a bit more transparent with people in terms of what's happening. Like, I think a lot of people came here thinking they could come here and settle and get a house and get a job immediately and everything would be rosy in the garden, but and not knowing how long they'd be in this accommodation centre. Like, it's the first question people ask when they arrive is like, how long are we going to be here? And the only answer you can give is, look, I don't know. Like, once you're here, it's up to yourself to find yourself accommodation, because beyond that, we'll say there's obviously like the Red Cross and pledged accommodation and things like that, but it's not immediate. Like, people are here for months and months before they are able to even get an interview for pledged accommodation. And then it could take weeks again after that. And then there's only a few houses and everybody's competing for the same places. But I think what we're doing for the Ukrainian population is brilliant. Like, I think we really are. I think the whole full social welfare and medical card, I think all refugees should be treated like that. I don't think there should be like a 2-tier system at all. But I do think every human being should be afforded transparency around their own situation. But I definitely think that the system we've seen work for Ukrainian people should be working for all refugees.
I think that's a really good word, transparency, because, in the Ireland we live in at the moment, there seems to be a lot of kind of miscommunication or lack of detail in certain things. And, public perception then of refugees can change.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, have you seen any kind of local kind of, I suppose, change in the community to Cahermile House here over your time?
Unfortunately, I have, in recent months. I mean, like that the community were so open and generous and continue to be, most of them. Now, don't get me wrong here, but not most of them, like all of them. But you do hear people now like coming out with the most radical stories, like the government is paying people 700 quid a week and they're getting this and they're getting that, and if their car breaks down, the government will pay for them to get a new engine or a new tyre or whatever. And you're just going, lads, that's not true. Like, it's completely crap, so but like, I hope that not everybody believes that stuff, because it is just so obviously fabricated by somebody who's trying to give people a bad name, like spongers and all this shit. But excuse my French. There was a small few incidents there maybe around 12 months ago where one of the girls, her dad was driving down the road and somebody kind of blocked his car on the road and started kind of shouting at him like, go back to Ukraine and stuff like this. That's the most radical thing that's happened here. And yeah, I think definitely there has been a shift in attitude. Luckily, like I said, the local community around here are all in for the Ukrainians, and a lot of the people here have assimilated into the community. They're working on farms, they're playing sports, their kids are going to school, they do like go to birthday parties, and a couple of the lads will go to the pub for a pint or whatever, or they'll go into the local shops in Newcastle, they'll just go in for a chat. I hear this all the time, like one of the lads goes into the cobblers inside Newcastle every day, like just to talk for nothing. He can't speak English, but he just goes in and talks anyway. So like, people know them around here, people know if they're coming from Carmel House, and they have lots of time for them. But there is definitely still an element of these crap stories going around. And I suppose we're lucky that we're in such a strong community that I think a lot of people would call it out if they heard it, but it does still exist, unfortunately.
And integration is important because, you get to see the human side, you get to see the story behind the person. And in many cases, we spoke about their interest in folklore and history, and we share similar interests as a nation. What has their take been on the Irish culture?
On the Irish culture, most are definitely into it. Like, yeah, there are a few people who are really started getting into the history of this area and of Ireland, and lots of people, actually most of the people in the house have been down to Ballybunion either by buses that we organised, or then as people started to get settled, they were organising their own buses and doing tours around, and going to museums and in and around the historic sites of Newcastle West. I know there's an appetite to learn about it. You know, a lot of people do know a lot about it as well. So, going to the pub, stuff like that. I think it's kind of semi-new enough. Like we all went down for a pint. There was about maybe 20 of us went for a pint last week, the night I finished work here. But they'll go to the pub and they'll bring dried fish with them and eat the fish with the beer. So everyone in the pub, all the Irish people were going, what the fuck is going on over here? And they were going, why aren't you eating the fish? Like, you're drinking beer, you have to eat the fish. So there's we're all human beings. Everybody likes to socialise and everything, but there's just slight differences. But they're novel and they're a way to introduce the culture to other people. So it's always like a conversation starter. I think people enjoy the sports. I think there's a lot of the kids who live here or have maybe moved out or in the community. They're involved in soccer teams and GA teams. I know they really enjoy that. I know Tanya, who you're going to speak to later, her husband has started a wrestling team here. So they're really integrating, and they're really, the kids as well are more than anybody else really getting into the Irish culture. Music, I know there's a great love for music. There's a few people here who play piano and do stuff like that, and they've been up to Knockfearna and they've taken part in the Rambling House sessions up there, where people from the community sing Irish songs, and then the lads from here will go up and they'll sing Ukrainian songs, and so there's a lot of culture sharing happening for sure.
What's been your most memorable experience?
Positive or negative?
Positive, negative, whichever.
Most positive experience, I think, or one that will stand out, I think, is we had a family day here last summer at some stage, and we had loads of things organised. We had art workshops and sports and rugby, and there was food here, and some of the people from the house made Ukrainian snacks and sold them, and everybody who lived here in the run up to it, we'll say all the guys from here got involved and had to make furniture out of pallets and stuff, and we invited other centres to come and spend the day here. And all the services that I was talking about, like Tusla were here, West Limerick Resources were here, they had a stand, Limerick Sports Partnership put on sports things, they also arranged yoga teachers, Tusla helped us out, we got the body tree in here doing therapies. It was a big, basically family fun day for people to come and integrate with the local community from around here as well. The local, I think Newcastle West under 12s rugby, it's under 12s or under 15s. They come out and they played rugby, they played a couple of games of ball and all this stuff. We had a bouncy castle and all this stuff. And at the end of that day, and also Paddy Mulcahy came out, actually, Lost Paddy came and played music. But at the end of that day, there were 4 of the young girls who live here. There was Maria, Nastya, Tasia and Varvara, and they had been practicing for, I'd say, about 2 months, this kind of dance routine that they were after making up themselves, and they came out at the end of the day and they did it in the grass outside for everybody, and it was just fabulous. It was beautiful, and they were just doing cartwheels and all this stuff, and then at the end of it they were kind of waving the Ukrainian flag, and it was really moving. And there's been lots of things like that where you see people getting together and it's really emotional, and you really can feel the emotion from people being away from their home and kind of coming together as a community here, and holding on to their love of their home, and it's very beautiful. I'd say I probably couldn't pick just one point, but that would be up there if I could.
And final question to you then. Do you have any kind of words to, I suppose, of advice to people, in Ireland, in the community, about supporting refugees?
About supporting refugees? I think if we could remove the word refugee from our vocabulary, it would be good. I think just looking at a person into their eyes and understanding that they're a human being the same as you, regardless of where they're from or what is going on. Just I can't believe that in this day and age we're still looking at people as if they're the other, them down there or them from there. It's just so archaic. I just think if we could treat people as human beings and appreciate that, but for the grace of God, there goes I, or there go I. It'd be us in the morning and we should be treating people with respect and welcoming them. And again, regardless of where they're from, just treating them like human beings, same as you would like to be treated.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.